Good afternoon. I'm California State Senator Dave Cortese, representing the 15th Senate District, Chair of the Transportation Committee this year, member of the Senate Labor Committee, and past Chair of the Senate Labor Committee. I also serve as a member of the Senate Agricultural Committee, among about a dozen committees that I'm on. I grew up as a grandson of an immigrant who came here and spent the first half of his life as a farm worker before eventually becoming a sharecropper in the orchard farming business in what we used to call the Valley of Heart's Delight in Santa Clara County. And because of that, his children and grandchildren were raised as farm workers. And so it was on days like this in August, before the advent of machines, that we grew up at age 8, 9, 10 years old with migrant farm worker families working side by side on our hands and knees picking prunes, not only in Santa Clara County, but just north of us here in the Marysville, Yuba City area. And one of the most challenging memories I have, even as a young person, all the way up to my teenage years, was doing that work in temperatures typically, not sometimes, typically exceeding 100 degrees. And of course now we're seeing typical temperatures as high as 115 degrees. One thing particular about the way I grew up was that it was primarily an orchard farming business. So we had natural shade. Workers could take a break, or oftentimes they didn't take breaks even though they were entitled to them until the lunch hour. But at least at the lunch hour you could make a makeshift rest, sit on boxes, but there was always water, typically on a forklift pallet, moving along with the workers, fresh water, drinking water, clean water, and attention always, especially to the youngsters, to make sure there was no heat illness setting in. Today, of course, that kind of work still goes on, but imagine that kind of work going on with no trees in wide open spaces, as we know, with so many crops, row crops here in California, where farm workers don't even have the benefit of natural shade. Here today, it took a couple of minutes. I watched them set up the pop-up tent here to create a little bit of shade for people. A couple of minutes in a pop-up tent that may cost, on sale at the store for $60 to $80, brand new. We have sometimes as many as 50% of agricultural employers who are not even providing that much shade, who are not even putting that much effort out or that much investment out to protect human beings, along with no fresh water. So we literally have agricultural employers who are putting more attention to water and irrigation of their crops than the human beings that are picking those crops, harvesting those crops, and delivering those goods, that produce, to our tables. So we have heat prevention measures. Those things are required. They've long been required. And why is that not happening? Landmark legislation 19 years ago created a strict OSHA requirement that shade and water and appropriate rest periods and attention to health and well-being needs to happen. It has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, certainly employees have the right to bring a complaint. But we also know through informational hearings that came about prior to the introduction of SB 1299, which we're here to talk about today, a bill I authored. Prior to that bill, in every year since I've been here, we've had hearings indicating that OSHA cannot respond quickly enough, that OSHA and DIR are shorthanded, that complaints are not followed up on, that there are more complaints withdrawn by workers, agricultural workers, than in any other industry in California. And we know why they're withdrawn, because of fear of retaliation or actual retaliation, like we've just seen with the Yolo 6. the Yolo 6 were fired farm workers who were retaliated against for standing up for their health and safety during a recent heat wave. They represent thousands of other farm workers across the state and nation who toil day in and day out under extreme heat wave conditions to ensure there's food on our table, as I just reminded us a few minutes ago. And that is why SB 1299 was introduced. It's a culmination of 19 years of complaints, several recent years of hearings, informational hearings where votes can't be taken but testimony is heard. Incredible testimony, just like you're going to hear today. So we've introduced a bill to try to create an incentive for employers who are creating important jobs to also comply with the law and treat workers like the good human beings that they are. California farm workers sacrifice their own health and well-being on a daily basis when they go to work. Make no mistake about that. The lack of compliance in this area not only leads to illness, it leads to death. And that's a fact. These are the state's backbone and lifeline in ensuring that we have food on the table and that our agricultural economy continues to thrive. It's one of the greatest travesties in America, and particularly in California, that people who are providing the work that was deemed essential work during the pandemic, essential work, no ability to work remotely, essential work because it's how we get fed, that these workers are some of the lowest paid workers in America and certainly in California. And they can't even get the decency, the basic decency of fresh water and shade and access to health care when they really need it. SB 1299 honors those sacrifices by enforcing compliance with existing heat prevention, illness, and injury laws. It doesn't create new laws. We think the laws are fine that have been on the books for 19 years. We just want them enforced, and we're going to insist on them being enforced. And we're going to insist that the governor sign SB 1299 to enforce the laws that are already on the books. Nobody's above the law, and certainly not agricultural corporations particularly who are flaunting the law. Through the collaborative effort of the United Farm Workers Association, who contacted me in the presence of the president of the United Farm Workers, Teresa Romero, and asked that this bill be brought forward, we need it adopted as the law of the land. I want to thank the UFW for steadfastly right here in this same place insisting upon righteous treatment of farm workers. And that struggle will continue just as it has for decades into the future. But right now, this is a win that we need to have. I want to thank the Yolo 6 farm workers for joining us this afternoon, and I know for many of you there's probably much more interest in hearing from them in terms of their firsthand lived experience and their experience with this retaliation than there is anyone else at this podium, and I respect that. But before we hear from them, it's with, again, great gratitude that I introduce the president of the United Farm Workers who made the trip to be here today to make sure everyone understands the priority that this bill is for the United Farm Workers. Please welcome UFW President Teresa Romero.
Thank you very much, Senator Cortese. It is a great honor to be here today with you and with the Yolo 6, as the Senator just mentioned, a group of farm workers who were fired just 40 minutes drive from here for defending each other and the rights during the extreme heat wave already we have experienced this summer. Many are going to oppose Senator Cortese's legislation, and they have said that this bill is unnecessary because there are so very few heat-related workers' compensation claims filed by farm workers. What happened to the Yolo 6 shows the ugly truth behind these statistics. Intimidation works. At the workplace where these workers worked, they reported experiencing symptoms of heat illness. The employer was not in compliance with Cal OSHA. There were no signs posted. His heat safety training was not provided. In fact, workers were told that they had to sign a declaration that they had provided the heat protection training in order to receive their paycheck. And they did not receive a copy of the paper that they signed. And if they had not signed it, they would have not been paid. On June 6, one of these workers, Erika Barros, who you are going to hear from in a few minutes, experienced symptoms consistent with severe heat illness, moving beyond feeling dizzy or nauseated. She felt cold and started shivering, and yet she did not want to report it or say anything for fear of being fired. I want to commend Jorge, Gerardo, Maria, Isidro, who are here with us today, for standing up for their coworker and agreeing to all go home together. Their solidarity may have saved a life. This case highlights a reality that farm workers know all too well, that the laws in the books are not the laws in the fields. It has been 19 years since California, under the leadership of Governor Schwarzenegger, became the first state in the nation to implement an outdoor heat safety rule. 19 years later, two things are clear. These rules, when followed, save lives. But all too often, these rules are not followed. And we're talking about providing clean water, access to water for farm workers, shade area for when they rest, and a 10-minute paid break when the temperatures get above 95 degrees. I'm sure we've been standing here for about, 20, 30 minutes, and we're feeling the heat. I'm feeling it. Just imagine now the workers on their knees, bending over, moving constantly, and when the temperatures are 110 degrees. According to last year's Farm Worker Health Survey conducted by UC Merced, funded in part by California Department of Public Health, found that nearly half of farm workers in California never receive safety prevention training as required by the law. Over 20% of farm workers say the employer never monitors for heat illness. And over 15% or more than 1 in 10 farm workers say they never have enough shade while outside. We all know this is a lack of compliance. Farm workers know it. Cal OSHA know it. Lawmakers know it. We all understand that there needs to be protections, and unfortunately the regulations that exist right now are not being followed. Every year the UFW receives complaints from workers who are experiencing dangerous out of compliance workplaces during extreme heat. The question has been what to do about it, and we believe that SB 1299 is the best path forward. The enforcement-only approach is not enough, and we have seen it. SB 1299 is a new approach. It does not penalize, and it is far, far cheaper than the prospect of funding Cal OSHA to the scale necessary to adequately enforce the law. Instead of overstretched agencies struggling to respond to complaints, after the fact, SB 1299 is focused on ensuring compliance with employers to begin with, to prevent farm workers from being in a dangerous workplace in the first place. To be clear, and contrary to what you might hear, SB 1299 is creative, but not radical. It is different from other presumption bills because the presumption would only take effect if a worker shows that their employer was out of compliance with existing heat safety regulations. And let me stress that point. This bill will only apply to workplaces where the employer is not following the regulations. Those who are following the regulations should support it, because otherwise they're being affected by providing what the law requires, what other ones are not. In an ideal world, SB 1299 will never be triggered, and it won't be for employers who do what they're supposed to be doing. You know, no law is a silver bullet, but we truly believe that with SB 1299, we have a chance to save lives. We have a chance to protect farm workers. We have a chance to make sure that farm workers go home to their families after working in the fields. California led the nation 19 years ago when it put a heat safety standard on the books. Let it lead the nation once again by making sure that heat standards are enforced. I now want to introduce Jorge Santana, a resident of Winters, California, and one of the Yolo 6, to speak about their experience. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Teresa. My name is Jorge Santana. I'm a resident of Winters, California. This is my first time at the state capitol. I am taking time off work today to be here. It's the middle of the day, and normally I will be working, but I think it is important. I'm here today to speak about the challenges of farm workers face when it gets hot. 2 months ago, me and 5 of my co-workers were fired from our work in the tomato fields by a labor contractor because we went home early during dangerous heat when some of my co-workers were getting really sick. That work site was also not following lots of the rules. There were no signs, there was no training. I saw how sick some people became, and for myself, I don't want to risk it either. This happened just 40 minutes away from right here. Many farm workers don't speak up when they are sick in the heat because they are afraid of getting fired. They are afraid of what happened to us. The day we were fired, I called Cal OSHA too, but they didn't respond to us until we got in touch with the union. We are here today to say that what happened to us, it was not okay. We are here today because we want to make sure that what happened to us does not happen to again. We workers just want to work. We don't want any trouble. We just want to work, be safe, go home, take care of our families. That's why it's not fair that we have to do the job of heat safety too. We already have a job. Why doesn't Cal OSHA do their job? Why doesn't the labor contractor do their job? Why doesn't the owner do their job? We do our job. We just want to be safe while we do it too. So my message for other workers is no job is worth your life. My message for the government is you have to help workers be safe, do your jobs. Tomorrow and the day after I will be doing my job, so please do your job. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Erika. Soy una madre inmigrante trabajadora de esta es mi primera vez en el Capitolio.
Thank you. Thank you. I am a mother, an immigrant, and a worker. This is my first time at the Capitol.
Este es mi primer trabajo en los campos y la verdad ha sido muy difícil por el calor y lo fuerte que es y lo peligroso.
This is my first year working in the fields. Truthfully, it has been very difficult because of the strong and dangerous heat.
Fui una de las 6 trabajadores que fueron despedidos el día 7 de junio de este año cerca a Winters y Dayton.
I was one of the 6 workers who were fired on the 7th of June of this year there in between Dixon and Winters.
La verdad, el incidente empezó conmigo. Yo había pasado ya ahí el asadón por los tomates, días tan duros donde me sentí tan mal, donde sentí mareada como que me iba a vomitar.
Truth be told, the incident began with me. I had already experienced in the tomato field some very difficult days where I felt bad, where I felt dizzy, where I felt like I was going to throw up.
Ellos no nos daban entrenamiento o cualquier aviso del calor. A veces nos sentábamos en la sombra cerca. Yo tuve que descansar bajo un árbol. Yo ni sabía de los campesinos tenían derechos a tomarse descanso. Yo tenía miedo de que si tomaba descanso me iban a correr por floja.
They didn't give us training or any warning about the heat. Sometimes we didn't have any shade nearby, and I had to rest under a tree for shade. I didn't know that farmworkers had a right to take breaks. I was worried that if I took a break, they would fire me for being lazy.
El día 6 de junio llegó a 105 grados por la humedad en los tomates. Se siente aún más fuerte. Yo me sentí tan sofocada, tan desesperada y estaba dudando si sudaba o tenía frío. En ese sentirme caliente o sentía frío, me empezó a temblar el cuerpo.
On the 6th of June, it got to 105 degrees. Because of the humidity in the tomato fields, it feels even stronger. I felt so suffocated, so desperate. I was sweating, and instead of feeling hot, I felt cold. My body started shivering.
Mis compañeros a quien realmente les debo la vida me decían que no me veían bien porque no me salía, y la verdad es porque tenía miedo de que me iban a correr. Yo necesito trabajar y necesito ganar dinero para mis hijos.
My coworkers, who I really owe my life to, told me that I didn't look okay. Why didn't I go home? And the truth is, I was afraid they would fire me. I need to work. I need to earn money for my children.
Yo pienso que si no hubiese sido por mis compañeros, de igual ahí muero ese día. Por lo menos me llevan al hospital.
I think that if it hadn't been for my coworkers, I could have died that day, or I would at least have been taken to the hospital.
Pero mis 5 compañeros me ayudaron y dijeron que ellos también se salían conmigo. Con su apoyo sentí la confianza de pedir permiso para todo irnos a casa.
But my 5 coworkers helped me, and they told me that they would also go home with me, and with their support, I felt confident enough to ask for permission for all of us to go home.
La supervisora nos dijo a los 6 que nos podíamos ir. Aún así, otros trabajadores que también se sentían mal se quedaron por miedo.
The supervisor told us we could go. Even then, other workers who also felt ill decided to stay out of fear.
Pero como yo temía, al día siguiente nos despidieron y quedé sin trabajo, lo que ha sido tan difícil y me ha costado mucho encontrar otros trabajos.
But as I feared, the next day they fired us, and I was left without any work. It has been so difficult. It has been very hard for me to find another job.
La verdad, si yo hubiera sabido que me iban a correr, igual no me hubiera ido. Aunque me sentía muy mal, aunque otros también se sentían mal, a las otras sí se quedaron y no las despidieron.
Truthfully, if I had known they were going to fire me, I probably wouldn't have left, even if I felt so bad. And even though other workers also felt bad, the other workers who did stay were not fired.
También en otros trabajos el calor ha sido tan fuerte y a veces no tienen sombra o agua suficiente. He visto señores de edad en otros ranchos desmayarse. En julio nadie llamó a Calosha, nadie les avisó a la prensa. Nosotros hicimos eso cuando nos despidieron, pero nada ha cambiado.
Also, in other jobs, I have found the heat has been so strong and sometimes they don't have shade or water. I saw an older man at another work site faint in July. Nobody called Kalosha. Nobody told the press. We did that when we were fired, but nothing has changed.
Yo estoy aquí porque quiero que algo cambie. No nos queremos arriesgar la vida cuando vamos a trabajar.
That's why I'm here today, because I want something to actually change. We don't want to risk our lives when we go to work.
Es importante saber que los trabajadores tienen derecho cuando hace calor pero no nos sirven esos derechos si los patrones no los respetan.
It's important that workers know they have rights, but those rights don't serve for anything if bosses don't respect them.
Espero que ustedes nos respeten y nos ayuden a mantener nuestros derechos y a trabajar sin miedo. Gracias por escucharme hoy.
I hope you will respect us and help us keep our rights and work without fear. Thank you for listening to me today.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that powerful testimony. Again, we appreciate the Yolo 6 here being here is more than anyone here present. Thank you. There will be no retaliation here today. I can assure you that. We'll open it up for questions and answers today, and if there are none, we'll just break up for any one-on-ones you want to get, especially with the farm workers. Any open questions? Yeah, great. She's asking what's the trajectory of the bill thus far. The bill will be heard in Assembly Appropriations. It's already made it through the Senate. It's an SB, Senate bill. It's gone through the Senate, made it off the floor of the Senate. It's been through Assembly committees. It's now in what would be, we hope, the last committee, Appropriations, and it has to come off what's called the suspense file in Appropriations, where there's 1,000 bills right now, and move over to the Assembly floor. After an Assembly vote, assuming there's no further amendments to the bill, it can go straight to the governor for signature. Yes. We're talking to the governor's office as a matter of due diligence constantly. We have hope that they'll see it our way. The governor's office, remember, this bill combines two different worker protection systems, the workers' comp system on the healthcare side, and the obviously the heat illness, the OSHA side of it. It sort of marries those together a little bit. I think the governor's trying to find a way to help with the enforcement and the compliance on the OSHA side. He hasn't been a particular fan of changes in the workers' comp system, but this needs to be an exception to really any of that in the past or in the future, because we're simply saying that there should be a presumption, which there would be for so many other types of workforces anyway. We have them for firefighters and police officers particularly. We have them, those presumptions just simply say that the burden of proof shifts to the employer if this particular type of injury occurs. Well, if you're out in 115 degree heat and you start to experience symptoms like we just heard about, just as a practical matter, we think there should be a presumption that occurred on the job. That's all the presumption means, that it occurred on the job. It didn't occur on Sunday on the way to church or something like that. It happened on the job. We think it's a simple ask. We've continued to prevail upon the governor's office. They certainly haven't said no. And so as long as they're not saying no, we're going to be optimists and expect a signature on the bill. It's It's always the biggest challenge. He has 1,000 times more power than any of us, because with the stroke of a pen, he can wipe out everything that occurred for a year or two if it doesn't meet his interest. And that's a good form of government. It's a form of government that we have. We respect that. It's our job to make sure that when his staff briefs him on that bill, that he's heard from enough folks and he asks the right questions so that he knows what this one's really all about. This should not be bulk packaged with any other types of legislation. This is about as close to emergency legislation as you could get right now with climate change, with the kind of temperatures that we're seeing. Right here in Sacramento alone, we have the hottest July on record in history. I'm understanding, if I read it right this morning, that the United States of America just had its hottest month in the history of the country. This is no different than a pandemic, except that it's going to be with us for a while. And if we don't do this now, people are going to be hurt and lives are going to be lost. And hopefully the governor sees it that way. Our colleagues certainly see it that way at this point. Anybody else before we break up? All right, and we'll just ask everyone here to be available if there are reporters that would like to talk to you. Okay, muchas gracias.